We're here in Philadelphia at the Democratic National Convention. I'm joined now by Prameela Bartholomeusz and Rishi Kumar. Prameela is an alternate Hillary delegate. Rishi is a Bernie delegate. Both of them are from the Bay Area. And we're going to have a little bit of a debate given what happened with Debbie Wasserman Schultz over the weekend. She stepped down as DNC chair, and obviously that's led to a lot of controversy. A number of Bernie Sanders supporters shouted down a number of the speakers this morning at the California delegation. Prameela, talk about that. I mean, you are someone that's been in support of Hillary Clinton for a number of years. Give us your thoughts on the reaction in light of DWS's resignation.
I'm just concerned about the timing. I don't understand all the pressures that were put on her leading up to it, quite honestly.
Do you feel that her resignation was justified?
No, I don't. I don't know that there's a basis for it. I think that she's conducted herself appropriately. I think there was a time for a new DNC chair to be appointed, and that would have happened over a period of time, at the right time. And yeah, no, I don't think that there was anything that one could point at that would lead to that, or should have led to that.
I will comment in a moment, but Rishi, why don't you chime in here as a Bernie Sanders supporter? A lot of folks here are upset at the way Bernie Sanders was treated throughout this process. Can you counter that DWS treated Bernie Sanders fairly, and the DNC for that matter?
So, I think, Ravi, we have had a string of controversies all through the process, all through the election process. And there is a feeling on the Bernie side, a feeling of injustice, a feeling of not being entitled to run for president. And that is still playing out today, and that's exactly what we saw today. There is a feeling of angst that is continued to be expressed. And shouting down speakers, for example, when they were shouting out Alex Padilla, our Secretary of State, they were chanting, "Count our votes." There is a sense that the votes were not counted in the state of California. The provisional ballots were not counted. And, I think Prameela and I, we were actually having a little debate prior to meeting you. And we were actually going a little bit back and forth as to why. Prameela's viewpoint was, I think we have to be respectful to the speakers. And my viewpoint was, this is how we are expressing ourselves. We need to let go of that emotional baggage that we are all carrying. It will play out, and hopefully at some point we will all let go. But until that happens, we need to have an opportunity to continue doing that, and also have these cordial dialogues. So, when Prameela and I were talking, Prameela was obviously very emotional about it, and I was taking the punches, and I was happy to take the punches. But at the end of the day, it's a dialogue that we all need to have, and eventually reconcile with whatever happens at this convention. We have to reconcile, we have to move forward, because the enemy is Trump. We have to get through and defeat the guy.
And I agree with what you're saying, Rishi. We do need to come together. Having supported Hillary in 2008, I very much understand this. So I think that's one of the things that concerns me, is that there hasn't been that much time to do that. But I do want to bring up something else that happened as well. And I had attended, as an observer, the Rules Committee meeting. And I think some of my reactions today, when we talked earlier, stemmed from what had happened there. And I think that we all believe one person, one vote is very important. And what has happened at the Rules Committee meeting was there was a push to abolish superdelegates. And I think that there is some sense to that, and I understand why. But I think there's a timing issue here. And I've been passionate about abolishing caucuses for a very long time for the very same reason, one person, one vote, please. And I feel that that is so tied in to this argument. And there was nothing that was presented, and I was disappointed about that. And so some of the supporters next to me, I pointed it out and I said, how do you feel about the caucuses? So what does that have to do with the superdelegate discussion? It has everything to do with it, because if you really believe one person, one vote, we should all be all over abolish caucuses. And I'm glad that we have a unity resolution now, which addresses, there's going to be a commission, and it's going to address both of those. So I think in that way, there was a lot of compromise that was made. And I think that's a good start. So I will call it a start. And I think it's really important that we recognize that, and I think time is really important. And after being a Hillary supporter in 2008, trust me, I know about needing time.
Real quick, for those folks who aren't aware of the differences between a primary and a caucus, just interject the difference and how that's impacted this particular election.
Well, with a caucus, what happens is that voters are told exactly what time that they're to appear for the caucuses. So if they say if it's at noon, you got to be there at noon. Unfortunately, the process is not so smooth that you're not there for 3 or 4 hours. And what you find also is that shift workers, I was staying in a hotel, I was traveling to help the campaign, and I left that morning knowing that everybody in that hotel could not participate in the process. That's just one example. And so that is what's restrictive, and you are not getting everyone's vote. So it is not one person, one vote right now. And it's really important that it is. Now with the primary, you have the full day at a minimum, because you have from 7 o'clock or in the morning till 8 o'clock in the evening. And that allows even shift workers to be able to get out their vote. What's even better in the primary situation is they have early voting, you can do absentee ballots in some states. That's really inclusive, and that's what we need nationwide.
Let me chime in here, Rishi. I want to get your thoughts here, first and foremost, about the WikiLeaks documents, and Prameela, please chime in afterwards, because you mentioned you didn't think Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that was justified for her to resign. But those documents are pretty damning, don't you think? Again, from a Bernie Sanders perspective, that the DNC did seem to have a dog in the fight. They did seem to advocate for Hillary Clinton.
You know, I think it's definitely adding fuel to the fire. And that's why the emotional rhetoric is still playing. And I think it's very, very justified. You know, that's the voices need to be heard. We need to express, and we need to air out our concerns. And that's really what is going on. So there are two aspects of this. You know, when you talk about, let's talk about the Democratic Party. You know, I think the Democratic Party is shifting in a direction that is not very conducive. You know, we are making the wrong choices, and we need to pull it back. We need to make sure that we are exercising our progressive values and making the right choices. I think when you look at choices that we are making in California, they are still quite progressive. We are defining the direction for the rest of the country. But is the rest of the country doing that at the national level? I don't think so we are doing that. So that voice needs to be heard. It needs to be expressed. Now, when you talk about the caucus voting versus the elections that we had, the primaries in California, right? I think I have kind of mastered the art of caucus voting, because I've won 3 of those, you know, 2 times as a delegate for the state of California. And both times I was actually the executive board member, finishing as the number 1 vote, getting the number 1 votes in the sometimes amongst 35 people, 59 people. So I've kind of mastered the art. And you know what? It's a flaky system. You know, for the California State Democratic Party, it works well, because only the people who are invested into the party show up to vote. And I kind of understand the process. I'm able to run through and win these elections. But at the national level, I think it's very unfair, because like how Prameela pointed out, you know, you have a 3-hour window to show up, long lines, and if you miss that window, you're not able to vote, right? But beyond that, not everybody gets to exercise their right to vote, because there are only the ones who are passionate who end up showing up. It's a very, very painful process to exercise your vote with the caucus voting. So I think, so here is a key point for the Democratic Party. We need to create an equal system across the 50 states that is not confusing. Right now, there is so much confusion. If you ask me, I have no idea, you know, which state votes how. All I understand is the California process, and that confusion runs across the country. Everyone is so confused. I think that needs to change. That needs to change for sure, and that's the dialogue that the California Democratic Party needs to have here at the convention now. Because if we are going to recruit or ensure that voters are registering as Democrats, we need to make that simple choices, make it bring some clarity to that, and also ensure that we are exercising progressive values. For example, you know, TPP, California is against TPP. Most of California is against TPP. Our elected leaders are against TPP. Betty Yee was on stage expressed the fact that we should be against TPP. And Hillary has a platform that supports TPP. Hillary has a platform that supports fracking. California Democratic Party has a platform that does not support fracking. there is a discord. There is a discord, and we need to ensure at the national level we are making those progressive values for the party to prosper. It's all about the party. It's not about you and me, and we need to, and not even about the party. It's actually about the country and which party is making the right choice. And that's why Prameela and I, we are here, because we are equally invested in the future of California and the United States by making those right choices. And that's the dialogue we'll be having here today.
Do you want to chime in quickly on the WikiLeaks documents that hasn't influenced your thought process on Wasserman Schultz resigning?
Well, just very briefly, because I haven't read through a lot of the emails. That's what I would do before I could make a real comment. But I can tell you that, again, on Saturday, a Bernie supporter was sitting right next to me, and we were going through some of them. And she herself was like, oh, wow. And then she goes, oh, but no, there's nothing in that. There's nothing in that. So we were flipping through. And if you read it in a cursory manner, you could draw a quick conclusion. But when we actually dissected a few of them, said, okay, we can see how this could be spun. And no. And we flipped through it, and we flipped through, and we flipped through, and we couldn't come up with anything that, if you actually sunk your teeth into it, there wasn't anything there. And I think the reason why she would have resigned that way is a lot of times what we see with politicians is they don't want to rock the boat. It's like, let me just resign. Let's end this discussion. But it doesn't necessarily mean a concession, in the sense that she was wrong. So that would be my take on it.
So my final comment is very simply stated. Why did Bernie, if you look back and see why Bernie resonated with America, it was simply stated because he had a very, very ethical, forthright behavior. As I'm an elected Saratoga council member, and when I go about operating in the community, everything that I say, everything that I do can be repeated. And that's why, I'm doubly making sure that I make sure I do the right thing, whether it's running a nonprofit through which we run many of our different activities, or even running a neighborhood safety watch program. You have to be ethical and forthright, because as elected leaders, our citizens expect that. And I think there is a lot of many different things that have gone wrong in terms of Hillary. So let me tell you a story, quick one. Yes. So 2007, I had signed up. I went to the city. I was signed up to be a volunteer for Hillary. I wanted to go out and campaign because I'm a big fan of Bill Clinton. I loved what he had done for the country. I said, well, if Hillary is there, okay, it'll be good. It'll be good to have Bill in the White House. Then I've seen this transpire, all these different happenings, and I'm like, I've not been thrilled about it. Bernie, I call him the most honest politician right now in the United States. And that's why many of us are on that bandwagon, because I look at myself, I like to operate in a very ethical, forthright manner, and Bernie does that. And that's why many of us are on that bandwagon right now.
I don't want to comment on, a lot more about the issues surrounding Bernie's and the background, I guess. What I would say is, I can't say with such conviction that that's the case. I mean, he's not released his tax returns. Why? I mean, he says that they should be very basic. I don't understand that. So, to me, why? What are you hiding? I'm sure that there's nothing, but why are you not?
Actually, I believe he has released his tax returns in recent months. I mean, his salary, he only has a limited salary. Right. He has released some tax
Just one.
returns.
We have 30 years of Hillary Clinton's, and we call her untrustworthy, supposedly. So I have a real issue with a comment that was made earlier about the number of chinks in Hillary Clinton's armor. And in one of the debates, Bernie Sanders was asked, so what is it that you can pinpoint and say, okay, she took money from certain companies. What is there in terms of evidence to show that she returned a favor in some way? He was not able to answer that question. There was not a single example of that. So I have a problem with people making arguments like that, not actually supporting it, and then having that chink remain because of something that just somebody threw something out, and these things stick. And that's what's happened with Hillary. So she's where she is today because a lot of people do trust her. And I'm one of them, and one of hundreds of millions. At the end of the day, she is trustworthy. I can't think of a more honest individual, actually, than Hillary Clinton.
Well, the debate continues on here in Philadelphia. And for the record, Deborah Wasserman Schultz is now going to be an honorary chair of Hillary Clinton's campaign moving forward in her 50-state effort to get out the vote to counter Donald Trump and the Republican National Committee. A final question for you, Rishi. Do you think Bernie Sanders supporters, all said and done, if indeed Hillary Clinton is confirmed as the nominee, will they get behind her in light of the fact that there are so many independents that are on Trump's side? Do you think some of these folks on Sanders will move towards Trump, or in the end they'll end up backing up Hillary?
So I think, my viewpoint, I'm very close to the action. I have been watching activities going on from our party folks, and folks have been jumping ship. I've seen their Facebook profile picture change into Jill Stein. I've seen them change party registration. I've seen them tell that they will not be participating in this election. So this will play out. This will play out, and I hopefully, we have to. My take is we have to make a choice. Unfortunately, we have to make a choice. We just cannot sit on the sidelines. And so if it is Jill Stein, whatever it is, we have to make a choice. It's not fair for us to not participate in the election. But similarly, on the Trump side also, we see a lot of Republicans who are not planning to vote because there is they are just not in favor of Trump. So maybe that will all balance out. Maybe we'll have a pretty decent election.
Prameela, Rishi, thank you for the time. We really appreciate it. We'll have more from Philadelphia when we come back.